dislodge from that debris and then start to flow on down the South Fork River. Again, South Fork River near Belmont, one person trapped in the debris. It looks like one other person has already been rescued and is standing there on the bridge with the responders with a towel wrapped around him.
I'm told we have some video here that kind of highlights where this person is. There's a spot shadow, as we call it, right there. Right within this area is where that person is who's trapped in this debris, was on a kayak, and something happened, somehow got knocked off. In this shot, at least from our monitors out here, hard for me to tell if they are wearing a life jacket or not, but you can kind of see two arms and a head right there. And these are large trees, folks. It's kind of hard to tell, I know, because there's so many stacked in together like toothpicks. But these are very large tree trunks right there that have been swept up. Anything that was within a few inches of the banks that when the river swelled would get picked up, or anything that was maybe just sticking on the ground, and when the water gets deeper, all of a sudden it floats up and heads downstream to wherever it will end up next. All kind of creating that area there where this gentleman was able to grab on. Perhaps a very good thing that he was able to do that. Now that the ladder, Erica, we're seeing here is they kind of extended it out. They've retracted it
a little bit.
But now they're pointing it toward where this gentleman is. So perhaps they were just trying to gauge the length of that ladder and whether or not it can actually get out, and then they could ideally pluck him right out of there.
And it looks like that first responder on the ladder right now is working with some rope or of some type or some type of device to be able to lower down to this individual. I saw him wave his arm a minute ago, maybe giving them the signal to begin to extend the ladder. That looks like that is what's happening now. Slowly but surely, they are extending this over this stretch of water, trying to reach a kayaker who has been stuck in this water along the South Fork River at least for the past 30 to 45 minutes at a water temperature of 56 degrees, air temperature of about 75 to 76 degrees. So they have been moving as quickly as they can to try to rescue this individual.
Again, if you are getting home from work and just joining us, we came into programming here at about 4:30 with this breaking news, this water rescue happening on the South Fork of the Catawba River here near Belmont.
It looks like it will reach.
And the ladder now being extended out. You can see how Steve said 3 to 4 miles per hour, but it looks like it is flowing so quickly. The rescuer there at the very tip of this fire truck ladder being extended out over this debris pile where that man is waiting to be rescued. We're not sure how long at this point he's been in the water, but as we've told you, it doesn't take long to possibly go in a hypothermic state if you're out there stuck in that water. 56 degrees, and we're hearing you could pass out in 1 to 2 hours from 50 to 60 degree water. You asked about the wind, Erica. He's certainly probably not feeling that, as Steve pointed out. The good news is that we're having a nice spring day, 72 degrees out there.
Think about if this had been yesterday and what we experienced.
If this had been yesterday, I doubt that they would even be able to get out there this quickly.
But also, meteorologist John Ahrens, who was out there today, said that they had not seen any others out there, even in the conditions that we have today. So these might have been, 1 to 2 brave souls that ventured out to do some kayaking or boating today and found themselves trapped in this situation. Again, one person appears to have already been lifted out of the water. That person is on the bridge there with a blanket or towel wrapped around them. And then this person, as you're seeing now, first responders reaching the person. Looks like they're talking to him about how they plan to get him out of there.
Probably the first thing asking is, are you okay? Are you in imminent danger of feeling like you might pass out or be swept away by the water? Are you tangled in anything? Right underneath where it says breaking news, kind of covering up where that gentleman is, but you see the red breaking news. There's his head right there, right above the N and the W and S in breaking news right there. You can see the gentleman holding on as well right there, but most of his body is underwater, and you can see all that debris around him. And in the top right corner of your screen is what everyone's concerned about, is him getting swept up in that. He's starting to move now. You can see trying to pull himself up just a little bit as they're dropping now a rope and what appears to be a harness down to this gentleman, perhaps asking if he can get that put on himself. And that's the question about how is he able to, how much mobility does he have, how much strength does he have to be able to put that on himself. Would they try to lift him up, or would they just pluck him up, kind of like a fishing pole with a bobber on the end, and swing him all the way across? That's what remains to be seen, but certainly they're talking back and forth. This gentleman does seem to be doing all right, hopefully, and hopefully very soon they'll be able to figure out the situation here and exactly what they want to do.
And this is, good news. Throughout the time that we've been covering this live, the person does appear to be alert, has been moving, waving his arms and moving his head around. And now it looks like he is communicating with this first responder about, what he's feeling there in the water, and then the plan to lift him out of this debris where he is caught up to his neck, it appears, just his head, neck, and arms sticking out of this debris. And as you look closer at the debris, it's, it's limbs, parts of trees. We saw, if it widens out a little bit more, you can see the part of a kayak, a yellow kayak sticking up in the debris, and any number of things kind of caught and trapped there on that little island of debris. And that is what stopped this person from being swept even further down. Our chief meteorologist, Steve Udelson, told us that 6 inches of water can literally wipe you off your feet. And so this is much deeper than that and moving very quickly.
Steve, you have something you want to add?
I'm just thinking that you see all that debris there. That's basically all the stuff that's been collected on the river between Lake Norman and Lake Wylie.
Okay.
So I mean, that's a lot of ground, a lot of miles of river, and that's why there's such a huge
mass
log jam, if you will, of stuff. And I've kayaked on that part of the river before on a quiet day.
What's it like on a quiet day?
There's current. You definitely feel like you don't want. It's hard to paddle against the current. That's why it is about 3-4 miles an hour of current on a normal day.
Yeah.
What you're seeing, the rushing water is on the other side of that logjam. So as you squeeze the available area of water has to go faster to get through. So on the backside where that ladder's coming from, you see, it almost looks like a beach.
And there is a spillway right there, which is in essence designed to control the flow of the water. As you can look on the satellite imagery right here, there is this design, and that's kind of what's catching.
That's basically where he is.
That's basically where he is. So as you can see here, and it's a good thing possibly because it stopped him. He could be several miles further down the river.
He would have kept going.
He would have just kept going.
And for those who live near this area, this is along Armstrong Ford Road, South Fork River near Belmont. That is where we find this person trapped in this debris. And for at least the past 30 to 45 minutes, we've been watching as first responders came out there, at least 3 fire trucks, an ambulance, and they're standing up there on the bridge, and they're coming up with this plan of how to lift this person out of the debris for the rescue.
You see the gentleman there who's on the very end of that ladder now kind of looking back and gesturing, and they are retracting the ladder, it appears right now. So he's saying, take me back. Perhaps whatever they thought they could do as far as getting something around him to lift him out, perhaps they're rethinking that. Perhaps he's saying, bring me back but put me lower. But they're pulling back just a little bit right now. Again, live pictures here from Chopper 9 Sky Zoom. You see that person fell off a kayak and got caught up in this log jam, as Erica said, at the Armstrong Ford Road and the South Fork Catawba River, South Fork of the Catawba River right now, being trapped out here as rescuers are trying to figure out how to pluck him out of the water. It's 4:50 right now, and we are going to stay with this with our continuous coverage as Eyewitness News at 5 would be starting normally in about 10 minutes time, but we're going to stay here until we make sure this man is safe.
You heard John talk about he's seen the South Fork worse. This is a very flood-prone area anyway, along the Catawba River. I was just checking the flood gauges. The river stopped rising late last night, so it has been slowly coming down.
Okay.
It never actually reached flood stage, so that is good news. So the water levels themselves are starting to come down, although you're going to hear me talk about it at 5 o'clock. We've got another storm coming, so that will mean more rain for folks that live along the banks of the river. It will likely start to rise again a little bit, but as far as this gentleman is concerned, he's going to be long plucked out, hopefully, before that rain hits.
And on a good day out there's a lot of debris underwater. There are a lot of obstacles and things that you need to be concerned about.
There are. In
kayaking.
a kayak, it gets very shallow in there at times, and you can actually hit rocks and whatnot when it's low. But I mean, with 3 inches of rain the last couple of days, the river is much higher than average. I was on Lake Norman this morning, and it is much, much higher than I've seen it in months.
In fact, you were talking about how they were some local lakes that have been lowered by the utility and raising it back up, and you made a comment to me yesterday, Mother Nature is going to beat them to it because of all the rain we've had.
Absolutely, yeah. And keep in mind, the river, it flows from north to south, right? Comes out of the mountains, through the Charlotte area, down through the upstate Midlands of South Carolina. So the mountains saw the most rain of anyone, and that water is just now coming down through the system. So it's going to take a while for the rivers themselves to gradually come down. Duke can control some of that with their controlled releases at the dams. I mean, that's why they put dams in.
Right.
For electropower, of course. but they can also help control the water level. So, we know more rain is coming, not nearly as much as what we just dealt with, but Duke will be on top of that as far as controlling lake levels.
Yeah, it
And
looks
you
like
were saying that the level has started to drop since
At the
last
South
night?
Fork River, yeah, it peaked just at about 9 feet, and that's the point where they say, okay, now we need to watch it. It's at 10 feet when we actually start to see some
I
flooding.
wanted to, the gentleman has wrapped the rope around himself, looks like over his shoulders and under his arms, whatever they were lowering down, to try to see if they can get him pulled out of here.
Like a sling of some kind, almost like a life
Well,
preserver kind of
yeah,
thing
like
that you
when they
would-
pull people out, typically they'll wrap it around their back and under their arms, especially in a swiftwater rescue, and they can try to lift him out. The question is,
Can he get it underneath his arms?
well,
I
is he
mean,
tangled up in debris? Is it under his arms? It looks like he was able to certainly do that. You can see the rope hanging down from the end of this ladder. On these live pictures, again, from Chopper 9 Sky Zoom. We're also going to be streaming this as well at WSOC-TV.com and on our Facebook page as well. If you want to share that with someone who's away from a TV, and our mobile apps as well. And we have many different ways to bring you this information. But if you're watching here on Channel 9, we see, again, these live pictures from Chopper 9 Sky Zoom. This gentleman's stuck. Looks like he's bobbing around just
pull
a
himself
little bit.
up a little bit.
My concern was that he would be caught up in there, and perhaps they're saying move around a little bit, make sure we're not trying to lift you in a 400-pound log at the same time.
Right, because we see the debris there on top of the water, but from this vantage point, you really can't tell just how deep that goes. So we don't know if he is entangled in some way around his waist and his legs, but at various points you see him looking like he's trying to lift himself up and bobbing up and down, trying to give the rescuers some assistance in getting him out of there. And it looks like he's appears to be going deeper now. Now you can just see his head and his hands there kind of grasping up to try to pull himself up out of the debris.
Again, as we've talked about, we don't know how long he's been in the water and what his condition is like, either mentally or physically, certainly. Probably terrified, as I know I would be if I were caught up in this huge heap, this mess that has been swept down the Catawba River. Sitting here as first responders are parked there on Armstrong Ford Road, trying to figure out what is next. He is pretty entangled, pretty ensnared. You see behind him, you see the water flowing, all that debris and adding to the pile. That gives you an idea of the current as it stands right there. Steve said about 3 to 4 miles per hour.
They're trying to, or he handed him something.
Interesting. I'm curious to see what that was that he just handed to him, perhaps something that was part of what they had there. When he handed down to him in the first place. They were almost able to reach, but certainly would not rely on just two hands grasping each other to try to get him out of there. And I'm thinking the concern, again, just might be how entangled or ensnared is he in all of this, and what are the risks to trying to pull him out and having him somehow slip or, again, be entangled and be injured further, if he's injured at all at this point, in the extraction. At the top of the screen there, you see that the water picks up speed tremendously, which is why we have this log jam. And if he's swept past this area, Erica, he's going into that rapid water. Now, there is a boat, as we saw, on standby, just kind of generally cruising around that area in case he were to get sucked into this rapid water, and probably could be picked up pretty quickly. But we don't know how many of these logs are just past that spillway and under the water. People can get entangled in those and be trapped and pinned. There's no telling what could happen to him if he goes past this point.
The good news, as far as the time that we have been watching as this individual has been trapped in this debris, the person has appeared to be alert the entire time. As far as, we see movement of his head and arms. So, at no point did we see that it appeared that he, was not able to move the upper part of his body. But again, if you're just joining us, you are looking at this shot along the South Fork of the Catawba River near Belmont, and this is along Armstrong Ford Road. And this individual has been trapped in this debris, and first responders have showed up and trying to get him out. We also understand that there was another person who was rescued. In an earlier shot, we saw someone up on the bridge with a towel wrapped around them. They appeared to be okay. But again, the next step, trying to get this person who is left behind here pulled up out of the water.
And as we've talked about, at this point, the clock is ticking. The concern, how long has he been in this water and how long before it starts to affect him? And we've told you that it can be 1 to 2 hours before you actually pass out in 50 to 60 degree water. We're right in the middle there. Steve said about 55 degrees or so is the temperature of this water. Thankfully, he's not completely underwater, and the temperatures are outside in the 70s. The rain has stopped, and the sun has come back out. As you mentioned, if this had happened yesterday in those torrential downpours, what would they even be able to do? Would anyone even be able to see him with the conditions we had yesterday? But somehow or another, he got off his kayak and got entangled in this mess. And there you see as Chopper 9 zooms out, all those people standing there on that road there, Armstrong Ford Road, hoping, kind of willing this extension ladder to go further, to drop just a few inches. You have to wonder how much, is it down as far as it can go at this point? Could they lower it, or it's pretty much...
It's getting a little bit lower now. He's walking closer to the edge.
Well, there might be a limit as to, could it touch the ground if they wanted it to? Is it already below the level? Is this as far down as it can go? Because normally the ladders will go up. And is it at the limit of its extension as well? That certainly would be frustrating if he was that close and thought, if I just had another 5 feet, or we could lower this another 4 feet, we could have this man out of here. You'd think if they could lower it right down on top of the logs in front of him, they would do that. The question is, if they can't, is that firefighter there just kind of offering moral support, communicating with him as they try to figure something else out?
Now again, this person has been at least trapped in this as far as the time that we've been on the air, which is coming up on 45 minutes to an hour, and the person is trapped here along the South Fork of the Catawba River in water temperatures that are around 56 degrees, air temperatures about 75, 76 degrees, and the water is flowing pretty rapidly. Our Chief Meteorologist Steve Udelson had told us previously that just 6 inches of water could knock you off your feet, and of course this is well above that. After all the flooding and downpours we had yesterday, Steve said that the water had started to recede a bit from midnight through now. So again, had this happened earlier this morning or even around noon, the water levels might have been even higher then. So we are in this situation where this debris was able to stop this person from flowing even further down the river. You now see him grabbing on, pulling himself up, and it looks like he might be able to dislodge himself, because we're seeing now more of his body than we have the entire time that we've been watching so far.
I want to remind you, as we approach 5 o'clock, you are watching Eyewitness News at 5 o'clock right now. We've been on the air for the past 30 minutes, and you see this man pulling himself up out of this debris. Since 4:30, we've watched him struggle to keep himself afloat. Hard to tell how deep this water is, almost like he's standing here, Erica, and able to maneuver himself around.
But he's digging himself out. You see with his right and left hand, he's digging himself out.
Life jacket on.
No, yeah, just a T-shirt on, as you can see right there, which is, of course, stuck to his body in that cold water, now pulling himself up. Right now, the firefighter extending his arms as well, and now the firefighter has in his hands what could be another harness. Perhaps he just threw him a rope to see if he could work himself up, and they'll put a more secure harness on him. I want to remind our viewers as well, we're covering this at WSOC-TV.com and Facebook. I can't imagine how hard that would be. He's got to be shaking, not just from the cold water, but from being terrified for his own life, to try to get the adrenaline flowing, to pull yourself up out of there, being encouraged by that firefighter on that extended ladder. And he's getting himself up out, but how far does he have to go for them to actually be able to pluck him out? Maybe clearing out some of that debris, because my concern, Steve, was they can't lift him. If this is as far as the ladder will go, they can't lift him straight out. He's going to come forward a little bit as he goes out.
And I got to wonder at one point, exhaustion. I mean, he's been sitting there.
Yeah, some fatigue setting in. Fatigue setting in.
I don't know how long he's been in the water. So that will exhaust you as well, just from trying to stay put.
Trying to stay put and making sure the current doesn't sweep you away.
Keeping your head above the water.
It seems just when they start to make progress, perhaps they're having a discussion here about what appears to be some more rope or a harness as well that they are handing down to this gentleman. He's thankfully moving, seems quite alert. Hopefully we'll have the upper body strength.
Is he trying to put something around his waist? Because he's, he appears at one point to be digging himself out, digging out some of the debris from around him, and then he's going around his body. We've seen him thrown down several things to him, so we're not sure if there's a belt or another harness that they may be using, adding to that effort to try to lift him.
I'd be curious if there's a winch of some kind at the end of that ladder, some sort of electric winch that would help, because that firefighter lying on his belly like that trying to get him out, you don't have a lot of leverage.
Yeah, either a winch right there or the rope going all the way back, trailing all the way back to the truck. Certainly this is something that firefighters train for. This exact scenario, perhaps not. This log jam being here, being close to a roadway, being able to get the ladder out there. Something I have not seen that perhaps is there is if there's a boat upstream that's as well cruising around as a precaution.
They could pull up on that other side.
Yeah, they have the rafts, the Zodiac boats that they can pop in the water in a heartbeat, and perhaps they're concerned maybe that's more of a jeopardy at this point, but someone upstream I was wondering if might be getting launched as well, just to see if they could help out or at least secure this man pulling up in their boat right there. Now we're seeing again more talking, more gesturing as well from this firefighter and this man. I want to remind you that we are told there were 2 people in the water. We did see one man up there on the bridge. He looked like he was wet, had a towel over his shoulders on Armstrong Ford Road. This happening in the South Fork of the Catawba River and not far from Cramerton as well. These gentlemen in a kayak somehow tipped over or something happened and now having to be rescued live here on Channel 9 at now 5:03 as firefighters are making some progress, certainly able to get out to him. You can see his arms outstretched, but it just seems right now they're either having a discussion or there's just something that is not enabling them to do what they're trying to do.
And if you're just joining us again, you are watching a swift water rescue along the South Fork of the Catawba River. We are covering this live. This is near Belmont, and it is along Armstrong Ford Road, which was blocked on either end, Cimarron Boulevard and Armstrong Ford Road. We had meteorologist John Ahrens out in the area, and he had been blocked trying to get around that, but I understand now that he has made his way onto the bridge. So, John, we want to talk to you about what you are seeing now. I know you're a little bit closer than you were the last time we talked.
Right, and I'm watching right now, Erica, this boat that's coming in just on farther downstream that looks like it's trying to get a little bit closer to the area, but the problem is this water's so aggressive and now almost near kind of a mini waterfall in between all of this debris. So if the ladder comes out, you really have no other way to reach this guy other than long ladder that's coming through. And I see the kayak kind of tip over beneath, and the water's just rushing down. This is right on an old bridge here, the old bridge of Armstrong Ford Road, and so the water banks up against that old bridge and creates a major rapid that goes down here. So that's the problem. So getting to this guy is going to be real difficult. Now, we've got a lot of people up here on Armstrong Road trying to see what's going on and make sure this person is okay. I see the New Hope Fire Department. I see medics. And I also see Cramerton Police, the County Police, everybody trying to count 1, 2, 3. Looks like at least a dozen either medics, paramedics, or fire trucks in this area trying to get to this guy. Now, as you're watching this live, this individual is on the ladder here at the Belmont Fire Department, Belmont 43 ladder. He's trying to get an idea if he can get down, but it's just a very difficult trip to get down close to the water to see if they can rescue this guy. Now, the accident is behind my vantage point, behind the old fire at this bridge. And again, the water's just rushing down at a very fast rate there.
Now, John, you mentioned you see a boat on one side. So for our viewers watching this, it would be toward the upper part of your screen. There's the bridge, and on the other side of that, there is a boat that we saw in the water. But, John, what about on the other side, kind of behind where this person has been stuck? Do you see any boats or rescue boats there?
Yeah, I see 2 rescue boats. I think they're trying to wait to see if there's an unfortunate incident. I guess he's clinging to the debris, but it's just something happening where he loses his grip. We've got crew on the other side of the bridge that would be able to catch him and find him quickly, God forbid, before anything got any worse. So I see 2 of those kind of boats, but it's the other side. It's just really a terrible spot to happen because, again, the water is coming down in a rapid form. It's like a miniature waterfall, which is caused by the remnants of that old bridge.
All right, John, thanks very much for that, and get back to us if you see or learn anything else while you're out there. And again, we see this man with his arms completely outstretched here, and he's got ropes in his hands, ropes that are going up to that rescuer right there, but it just seems like they're not able to make any progress. And again, I have to believe that if they had 3 or 4 more feet that they could extend that ladder, that they would have done it, that this could possibly be as far out as that ladder will go and perhaps as low as it can go as far as going down from being flush with the top of that fire truck. At some point, it is going to hit the side of the truck, and that's as low as it can go. Perhaps they're even trying to find more equipment right now, different vehicles that have ladders that can go longer and lower. John mentioned out there New Hope Fire as well, Belmont Fire, Medic, Cramerton Police. Perhaps another municipality, even Charlotte, has a longer ladder truck, or somebody's on the way right now. If there is something, a better piece of equipment for this job. But I guess their first concern here right now is just to make sure this man is secured, that he doesn't get sucked under these currents. And it appears that that has certainly been done. No life jacket on, just wearing a T-shirt. We don't know if he had one with him. A lot of people set out for the day and they don't expect to be in a situation like this, but safety first, as always, is a good idea. Thankfully, he came across all this debris, as we see live here from Chopper 9, and it's been caught up now. We heard about this around 4:15. We went on the air at 4:30 this afternoon as soon as Chopper 9 had these incredible images for you, and we've been covering this for you ever since. A lot of people just getting home. This is the South Fork of the Catawba River in Belmont, where a kayaker, apparently two of them, went in the water. One of them is out. We saw him standing on the roadway there, but another one trapped up in this debris, and rescuers are trying to get to him. It could be an hour or two before you start to feel the effects of water. This temperature, about 55 degrees, anywhere from 50 to 60, can cause the effects of passing out and hypothermia, which essentially would be, of course, your blood. You get cold, it starts to go towards center mass, which means things, extremities like fingers, start to lose their power and lose their sensation. And fingers, you can see, are very important in these live pictures because he's having to clutch onto that rope. The fingers, the arms, the forearms, that's what's going to pull this man out of here if he has to do that himself. And so those are some of the first things to really suffer, Erica, in these cold temperatures.
And what we have seen is, the individual, this man, doing what he can to try to help rescue himself. We've seen him taking his hands at various points and digging out some of the debris that's around him. It looks like they might have put a harness, dropped it down to him. Looks like he might have been trying to strap that around his waist. And at various points, we've seen him make a big effort to try to lift himself up, pulling himself on that rope to try to get out.
My producers are telling me that they're about to put one of those swift water rescue boats in the water, as I call it. I grew up calling it as a Zodiac, or one of those. You'll see it as probably a boat that's like an inflatable raft. It's more than that, but it's going to be probably red. It'll have guys in there dressed like this gentleman with helmets. As I was asking earlier, why is there not anyone upstream coming in? Those people might be able to get there and just pull him out if they can kind of rest that boat right up against that debris and just pluck him out. If this ladder went out longer, perhaps they could have done it that way, but right now, probably what they're doing is making sure this man is safe and secure, that he's not going to go underwater. If that whole load of logs and dirt and debris somehow dislodged and came cascading over the spillway, at least if he has those ropes around him, they know that they could pluck him up into the air. So perhaps that's their thinking here, is just secure him to make sure his situation does not get any more precarious, as they've devised a plan to come in from a different angle with one of those boats. I don't know if we can ask Chopper to zoom out. I guess if there was a boat coming in that they probably would, but it almost seems like that pile's gotten bigger since we went on the air at 4:30. It is just a tangled mess.
It is a tangled mess, and when we saw the shot wider just a moment ago, you see the difference in the water speed from where the man is right now in the debris versus that drop off. And if he gets swept away into that, you see how quickly the water speed picks up there. And then also, as we go wider, you can kind of see toward the left-hand side of your screen the top of a yellow kayak. And it looks like it might not just be lodged, it looks like it might be split in half. And so that might show some of the force with which this individual might have had to endure as he came downstream, and then, I guess by luck, got stuck in this pile of debris, because it kept him from being swept on down further stream. And right now you're looking live as this rescue attempt has been going on for nearly an hour, as at least 3 fire trucks, medic, and other crews all out there trying to save this one man who's become trapped.
You talk, Scott, about the pile getting larger. You can only assume that he was at the back edge of the pile when he was there, and now there's a lot of logs behind him.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is getting larger.
Closing in around him.
Exactly. Yeah.
Pushing on him.
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, we got a lot of force. I mean, water, as we've been saying, is extremely strong. The force of water is like it's an immovable force. It's like a brick, and all that stuff is piling onto him, squeezing him.
I want to go out to meteorologist John Ahrens, who's out there on the scene. John, what are you seeing?
I can't really control this and my camera.
Hey there, Scott. Right now, it looks like they're going to get the rescue going on right now. So here you have 3 people that are kind of revving up the engine. Keep in mind, you got a vicious current that they get it through, and that water's going to try and pull them down quickly into this rapid-like water that you see here in the background. So they're revving up the engine now. They kind of came back from a ramp on the other side of that bridge, and they're going to try to get to the middle part of the South Fork here to conduct this rescue. If you kind of look to the right where this camera is, that's the kayak, half submerged. You cannot see the person that is in need of rescue right now. That is just behind the spire here. And it looks like guys are going to have to go back because they just can't get the engine working strong enough to get through that water. So they might have to figure out another method here to get this guy, guys.
So explain that to me again. Is that what I'm seeing here? Is looks like the tip of a boat.
Yep.
Is that what I'm seeing there, just kind of peeking around the left side there? And so they're going to, you're saying that.
Right, and that's
yeah, John, go ahead.
That's right,
sorry.
Scott. And they're trying to rev up the engine there because you're talking about very fast-moving water. I don't know if that boat has the strength to get across the river channel to get to that guy. I mean, we're talking about a very strong, fast-moving, velocity-wise, of water. They're trying to rev up the engine, but I don't think they're going to be able to do it this way. They've tried several methods here. You got the ladder here, but I don't know if they're going to be able to get this crew out in this direction. In fact, I see a couple of firefighters coming back down. They're actually going to bring some more equipment. They're right there at the side. If we pan the camera there, you see that? It looks like they're going to need some more equipment to figure out a way to get this. In fact, look what it's another engine.
So I mean,
they're putting
there's
up another
different size
engine to
engines,
put onto that
John.
boat.
You know,
Another motor.
You'd think they'd have at least a 50-horse engine on there, but maybe not. If the two engines on there, then they have to, of course, mount it to the raft and get both of those going as well. You'd think even a 25-horse would be enough to get downstream, but then you have to be concerned about, are you going to just smack into this gentleman in the back of the head?
They may not have a lot of control.
Well, and then how do you get butted up against the logs in that raft, and how do you get off of it? Because you don't want to, then you've got propellers that are spinning around.
Yeah.
And so there are a whole host of concerns.
So imagine the engine wasn't strong enough in that current. Can you imagine trying to kayak? You know, with a small paddle. He didn't have a chance.
And you're looking, if you can see John's shot, it's in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. And as the camera pans around, it gives you a closer vantage point of just how quickly that water is moving on the other side of the debris. And there you see it. You see how rapidly it picks up there. And so that's what they're dealing with. We saw them for quite some time on the bridge discussing before they took the ladder out there. So they're talking at great length for some time before they come up with the exact strategy that it's going to take to get this person out.
5:14, the time right now, just about 5:15. You're watching Channel 9 Eyewitness News at 5. Breaking news coverage of this water rescue after the torrential rain and the flooding we had yesterday and still high water today. A kayaker here trapped, hanging precariously in this pile of debris. This is on Armstrong Ford Road near Belmont and the South Fork of the Catawba River. Firefighters have been on the scene since we went on the air at 4:30, extended this ladder out, gave this gentleman in the water some ropes to hold on to, presumably to make sure that he does not slide over into those rapids. But the extraction is what's giving them problems. It appears as though that ladder just can't go out any farther, another 5 or 6 feet, and perhaps they could just lift him right up out of the water like a bobber, but they can't quite seem to do that. At this point, to pull him out, they'd have to pull him through all those logs, through all that debris, and they don't want to do that. So as John said moments ago, they've got a Zodiac, a raft with an engine on it upstream, which would be toward the top of your screen, trying to figure out how they can kind of zoom out and, of course, then be carried down by the current. They've got engines with propellers moving. They don't want to get butted into this log pile and hurt this gentleman. So right now there's just a lot of concern about how to most safely rescue this man.
And with the man there stuck in the water, you talked about the temperatures. We talked about, how he could become stiff, your legs could fall asleep, and especially that responder there on the end of this ladder. He's been laying in that position for quite some time. So, we talked about the fatigue that could be setting in after a situation like this, because we have been on the air for about an hour, and they have been, pretty much stuck in this position trying to figure out the best way to lift him out.
I'm told that we need to go back to John Ahrens
back to
quickly,
meteorologist
John.
John Ahrens, because he is on the ground there on that bridge at the scene. John?
Yeah, right, Erica. And, they're still trying to get this engine to work. If you look at this, you'll see them revving up the engine here. If I can I'm talking and hold the camera here at the same time. There they are.
All right.
So he's revving up this engine. They're probably going to have to get another one on there. And also, if you can see in the background, they have a couple people kind of waiting in, a couple rescue crews waiting in to see if they can try another kind of route or method to get here. So they just really are trying to figure out ways. Now look back here, you'll see some debris that's trying to approach as well. So this guy, the person that they're trying to rescue, has a lot of dangers. You mentioned water temperature. All the debris that's coming down this river is also a big concern. And look at the rapids here that this boat has to get through. This current is tremendously strong. They're just not going to get enough power out of this to try this method. I'm not really sure what they're going to have to try next, but at this point they're having a very difficult time getting this engine moving through this current.
So you're actually seeing the propeller moving, they're powering up this engine and it's not moving?
Right. That's right. And in fact, I'm watching, they had to bring in another engine. And I don't know if they're trying to get down the hill to get there, but
okay, I'm told that they're
kind of tell.
Perhaps
I'm not holding it too shaky.
Perhaps they can't even get it started because I'm being told that they're trying to pull on that. Of course, some of these are, you pull the starter cord, and perhaps they can't get the engine started, and that could be part of course, a huge issue, which is why they're bringing another. Because I would think that once they get that on there, they could zoom right through that water. The concern, though, is what happens when they start to float back towards.
You see some movement, John?
Yeah, Scott, yeah, here we go. All right, it's moving now. Now let's see if they're going to be able to get through this current.
Yeah, I would think
at this point they're just kind of revving it up to make sure it's okay.
Yeah, once they've got it going, and of course they engage it, the engine, they should be able to get out there in pretty short order. I would think at least a 25-horse engine should be enough to get them out there pretty easily.
Here we go, and this is Charlotte Fire, guys. Charlotte Fire's down here too. I just
Charlotte Fire.
out.
Okay, so they got their boat out there. They're probably going to jog upstream a little bit and then slowly just try to float back toward that gentleman. You're seeing here now two pictures, John's live picture as well, and the picture from Chopper 9 Sky Zoom. And again, no problem. I think that the issue, John, was just they couldn't get the engine started. I think that was just 100%. They were pulling on the cord. Perhaps they got flooded. Once they got one on there that works, they're going to dance around this water, I think, just fine. They've stopped here, and you can kind of tell us what you're seeing as well, John, is it looks like you've got eyes on it there on the ground. Do they have anything in their hands like oars or a paddle, or do you think they might just kind of try to float back and kind of stop right next to them?
Yeah, I don't see any boards or any paddles or anything like that, Scott. They're just, but as you mentioned, because this is so aggressive, they have to be very careful as they trod through to get here. Now, about where, from my vantage point, you cannot see where the person is stranded, so they're just have to slowly go through here and try to wade through the current as they approach this individual. I do not see any paddles at this time. Again, this is Charlotte Fire doing this. They've got their boat out.
All right, John, thank you. Yeah, so they've got you can see the motor there. You can see the smoke coming off of it, right there. Sometimes they'll do that when you just start them. You can see the propellers moving, and you can see the turbulence behind. They're going to go at a slow idle, I would imagine, and just kind of try to feel their way into getting into position to let the current actually just kind of do the work for them. They'll just use that motor right there to kind of position themselves. They probably don't want to overshoot, but they should be able to, once they get there, if they can kind of let that raft kind of just softly land against that debris pile, they can maybe slowly work themselves into a position to pull him out. But there's a possibility as well the boat could get stuck.
If you're just joining us now live, we are covering a water rescue along the South Fork of the Catawba River near Belmont and Armstrong Ford Road. And rescue crews have come out here for the past hour trying to rescue a man who is trapped in a huge pile of debris here. We saw them extend the ladder out, and there's one first responder hanging out over the edge of the ladder trying to reach the man who's trapped in the debris. And then our meteorologist John Aarons there on the bridge talking to us about several attempts, and now they finally have gotten this rescue boat out into the water, and it's moving ever so much closer to this person who is trapped. Now we can see the top of the debris. We don't know how deep it goes. We don't know how much his legs may be trapped or how much is around it. But again, they are getting closer, moving in gingerly to make sure that they don't dislodge anything and make this situation even more dangerous for him or push it up against him any further. But they have reached him right now.
Yeah, the engine is still idling, but probably disengaged at this point. So the engine's moving, but the prop is not. Excellent job by Charlotte Fire Department there, and just kind of judging the current and just letting it take them right to this man. He's up out of the water, and he is up onto this boat. You can see his legs there. He's got a swimsuit on, and he is saved. He is out of the water, and a very precarious situation avoided.
And the Charlotte Fire Department pulling up in that rescue boat, pulling him out of that debris, rescuing this person who has been trapped for well over an hour at this point, and also the rescue crew extending that ladder out, kind of making sure that he stayed in place and that he was safe and alert until they could actually reach him, lock arms, and pull him up out of there, and they're off to take him to check him out, try to make sure he's okay.
Yeah, he's going to be on shore. You can see the boat heading towards shore there, just about 20 yards from meteorologist John Ahrens. John, we saw some other people who look like maybe family members or friends, and another person who looked like he was on the kayak. Are any of those people going to kind of meet this person? What are you seeing?
Yeah, Scott. In fact, just heard a tremendous amount of applause as this individual is being rescued here by Charlotte Fire. Now, in the foreground, they're going to lift him up onto this ramp here and check him out. There he is. He is walking on his own 2 feet.
Good news.
So he appears okay. He's just being hugged by family members right now.
He's walking on his own.
Shaking hands with some of the members of the fire department, and they're going to lead him out. They're going to lead him out now. But he looks like he's okay to me, guys. He looks okay. They're going to check him out, but he looks okay.
Certainly, they're going to want to check him out. Yeah, like you said, check out his body temperature and see how he's feeling. And he cuts and he scrapes and he bruises. Again, Chopper 9 Sky Zoom right there on your left, and John Ahrens in our live picture there on the ground. We see he appeared to be, to me at least, appeared to be a fairly young man, fairly young person. We see right there Swiftwater Rescue Crews, and a gentleman walking in the front right there
Walking
in the
on his
black
own.
T-shirt and the black swim trunks. That's the man who was trapped in the debris. Looks like he's doing great. He looks
Stay
like he's
with me,
doing just
guys.
fine. Yeah, see if
Stay
you
with
can
me,
get
guys.
closer, John. Certainly, we don't want to intrude on him.
Yeah, I'm going right to him.
We have
Okay.
meteorologist John Ahrens
He's hugging a
there
loved one
on
right now.
Armstrong Ford Road, hugging a loved one, walking on his own accord, and there you see him.
This is the best possible outcome. You see,
They're checking him out right now.
Very grateful to first responders. They're putting that blanket on him, John, shaking the hands of some of the firefighters out there. We call these people heroes, and it's because they put their lives on the line. Anything could have gone wrong out there to save people, and we've seen that repeated here today.
There's a little baby there.
A little baby there, and looks like paramedics are there as well, checking him out. No matter what he says about I'm fine, they're going to have him in an ambulance and take him to be checked out. There are a number of things, like we talked about. How long was he in the water for? We know we've been on the air for about an hour, so it's about an hour at least, probably closer to an hour and a half minimum from the time we first heard about the call.
Yeah.
Let's go back to John there live. He's just feet away from this person who was pulled out of the water. John?
Yeah, right now they're wheeling him. They're putting him on the ambulance chair here right now. Oh, sorry. So here he is being wheeled out. He's going to be evaluated. Seems like he was okay. He was walking in on his own power. Doesn't seem to be shivering or anything like that. But you notice they do put a cover over him to make sure that he's able to warm up his body temperature quickly. And then he is going to get into the paramedics here. They're going to load him up here. This is the Gaston County Emergency Medical Services. There they are, loading him up in the truck right now. As we watch this guy, you can see him covered up. He's all covered in debris right now as well, and certainly very soaked to the bone for sure. But he is alive and well. Seems like he's doing okay. So they're closing up the truck right now, guys.
Now, John, I don't know that certainly this has got a very happy ending. No one's seriously hurt, as it appears. Anyone else standing around? Have you been able to talk to anyone who thought they saw what happened or heard from somebody about what happened?
Not hearing anything what happened up to this point, Scott, but I do know there was a young woman that just gave him an incredible hug as soon as he got up onto this bridge on Armstrong Ford Road. So presumably a significant other and a couple other friends. And the best part about this was it was tremendous amount of applause afterwards.
Well, thank you, John. Meteorologist John Ahrens there, and you're watching the successful end to a rescue with a man pulled out of the water safely, and we have been covering this for you live. We're going to continue our coverage on Eyewitness News at 5:30 in just a moment. We'll be right back.
Can I hang up the phone or?